Sex workers of Reddit, what's the weirdest kink a customer has asked you to fulfill? I was a cab driver for several years. Night shift, ghetto. Loved that job. I had a regular escort who always requested me, probably because I didn't ask her for anything whilst driving her to her next John. She'd go up into an apartment, house, or hotel room and have me wait. Sometimes a full hour, but rarely over 15 minutes. I never argued because waiting and a return trip keeps the meter running longer. One time she came down after maybe 10 minutes. She looked half amused and half terrified. She said that the guy had her put on a muumuu and an old lady wig, then yelled at him while he took a shit and, edit for clarification, during, he jacked off. Super weird. Freud would have something to say about that guy, no doubt. Not one myself, but I knew a reporter who had done a story on the infamous red light area of Mumbai. One of the stories that stuck with all of us is of this one guy who'd turn up at one specific date every month with a duffel bag. Now you'd think he'd bring kinky devices with him to use on the sex worker, but instead, he'd bring a full set of traditional Indian wedding attire. The sex worker told the reporter that this specific customer would pay her whatever she asked, as long as she'd wear the wedding clothes. He would respectfully wait outside the room till she changed, and then he would make her sit on the bed. He would pull up a chair, sit in front of her, and just look at her and weep. For 2 hours straight. Then he'd leave, without laying as much as a finger on her. Turns out, he had lost his wife to some freak accident hours after they got married, and it messed with him big time. One of the saddest stories I've heard, and it makes my heart ache immensely whenever I recount it. Had a roommate in college, 2000s, who did private adult videos by request only, basically expensive personalized video porn. She came home pretty bummed one day and I asked what was up. She said she had been paid $500 to put on an adult diaper and comically large baby bonnet and walk otherwise naked around a local college green space. The whole video was her walking around with her fingers in her mouth acting like a confused adult baby. At the end she was told to pee in the diaper and show the camera. When she thought she was done, the director asked if she wanted to poo in the diaper for $1,500 instead of $500, saying the client asked if it was possible. She declined immediately, and the director was I guess okay with it. She was bummed she missed out on making an extra $1,000 because she had pooped before going to work. We both laughed so fucking hard. What a ridiculous thought. Darn. If only I hadn't pooped before work, I'd be making some real money. My mother was a full-time dominatrix basically my whole life. I grew up in New York City and she would have her slaves come over and do all of our housework, get us groceries, etc. The most out there dude wasn't the grossest or the most perverted. He was a Hasidic Jew who wanted to be a rug in our house. He would pay my mother to lay on our floor and occasionally she would step on him, but mostly he just wanted to be ignored. She also had a guy who would come over and pretend to be a chair. I've got stories on stories. A lot of men are weird lol. I'm a dancer in a club and I love kinky guys. Other than the doms, I won't get into that whole thing. Kinky guys trend to be pretty passive and tip well. Mostly I meet foot guys, cuckolds, men who wear women's undergarments, and just overall subs who are open to whatever I'm into. After 15 years in the industry, I thought I'd heard it all. Then I met a guy who said he was into bones. As in, he bought a 45-minute room and just wanted to feel my skeleton. He was touching my collarbone and hips pretty hard. It wasn't the most comfortable dance ever, but he was so grateful to be acting out his fantasy and super respectful of me and my time. One of my favorite guys ever. Not me, but I heard this story from a friend of a friend who worked in a BDSM club. She had this client that would come in with a few bean bags full of nettles. It's a stinging plant for anyone not familiar. Wikipedia says they are not native to a lot of places. Anyway, then they put a tarpaulin down on the ground so they could roll him up in it with the nettles like a joint. Then she just kicked fuck out of him, and apparently that's what got him off. Not super crazy, but I had a guy approach me through Reddit and ask just to be able to give me money with no strings attached. There was a couple-month period during which he would gradually send me money in multiple $15 payments spread throughout the day. Sometimes we'd text too. Sometimes we wouldn't message for a week. but he'd still send me money and quietly wait until I felt like talking. He liked when I ignored him, and if we talked it turned him on when I was mean. He ended up giving me about $1,500 without him ever asking for so much as a photo. Not a sex worker personally, but I used to manage and bartend at gentlemen's clubs many moons ago. One night while I was tending the bar, one of the girls comes down to my bar and asks me for an empty beer mug. I give it to her, she runs off to the bathroom, then comes back out with it, full of urine. She then runs off to her customer, mug full of yellow liquid in hand. A bit later, she comes back with the mug, now empty, tries to give it back to me, and I tell her to throw it away. She does so, then proceeds to tell me that a customer paid her $300 for her to pee in that mug, and then he wanted her to watch him drink it, which she did. Beyond that, I saw guys come in, pay girls to clean mirrors and tables in the club, and they simply watched, though a few would even get up and help them with the cleaning they were paying them for. One guy would walk in, talk smack to every girl he could, and when one would finally get angry enough to slap him, he would pay them $100 on the spot. FYI, this dude was about 80 years old. Some guys would even come in at the start of a shift, would bring panties with them, and ask a few girls to wear the panties all day. They would then later show up at the end of the shift and pay the girls $100 and retrieve the used and worn panties. A lot of weird and oddball fetishes out there, but to each their own. I love the lack of kink shaming here. Also, not a sex worker, but ex-military. Some guys aren't too shy about sharing even the most personal shit. One of my buddies had a kink with those horse girls that actually pretend to be horses. I mean, they gallop around on all four and jump over the obstacles, the whole 9 yards. He grew up on a ranch too. Said what's wrong with combining the best of both worlds? That sentence raises more questions than I'll ever need answered. A customer had a fishing fetish, got fisher outfits for some girls like a raincoat or some shit, and brought a fishing rod, boots and all, and the girls had to act like they were fishing him while he was laying on the floor and moved like a fish. Craziest shit I heard, but whatever floats their boat, I guess. I think I might qualify as a one-time sex worker. One night, after riding the subway home from work, a guy followed me off the train and offered to buy the shoes off my feet. He stammered through some nonsense about being a sneaker collector and paid me $450 in cash for my old, sweaty canvas Vans. Totally worth the 2-block walk home in my socks. I think the strangest I've ever gotten was a man who had a huge fetish for Disney characters, and I'm not even talking just Disney princesses. He loved shit like Lilo and Stitch or Pooh Bear. He regularly paid me several hundred to dress up as his favorite characters and basically verbally abuse him. It was a sweet gig while it lasted, however strange. Nothing really surprises me anymore after that one. I'm dude who did weird stuff during college to earn some extra cash. My job was to go to these afternoon parties organized by these filthy rich housewife and do catering service in our undies. Undies were provided by the secret friendship company. If they would like us, they would put in a currency note of 50 hundredths in our undies and take a drank peek of the good stuff. Once a woman asked me to assist her for personal work to earn more cash. I told her that I will not have sex for money. She told me that I will not be required to have sex. I got on board. She took me to a room, paid me $5,000 just to watch her slowly undress and cry. I initially got scared as I thought she is framing me for rape, but she calmed me down and only asked me to watch. She slowly undressed herself while crying really loudly, and then she lied on the floor naked, bawling like a baby. There were actual tears and stuff. It was really sad for me, but $5,000 meant a lot during college days. Finally, she silently stood up, covered herself, went for a shower, while asking me to leave immediately. She took my number, and we made it a monthly routine. I was terrified every time she called me for the work, but I still did 7 to 8 sessions for the cash before I accepted that it's too weird for me. I couldn't sleep nicely for 2 to 3 nights after each experience. Not too fancy like other stuff here, but weird AF still. TLDR, rich lady paid me to watch her undress while crying. Nothing particularly exciting, to be honest. Kind of disappointing. Slightly more interesting requests included pretending to be married and having to be quiet so we didn't wake the kids. Armpit licking, surprisingly common. Pretending to be a cat and meowing, crawling around and drinking out of a bowl on the floor. Wearing pantyhose and being stretched and put into various yoga type poses while he sniffed me. Met more interesting folk in my day job I think. I feel obliged to mention the human toilet though. I never met him, but some of the other girls said there was a guy who would pay girls to poo in his mouth. Apparently they would line up outside his room to do it. Not judging, but I don't think that I could ever do that. Many years ago, I used to drive escorts around from client to client. I was chauffeuring this one girl for the night, and out of the blue, she got a call from a friend. Friend couldn't make the call, so she contracted it to her. I guess they help each other out. Anyways, she's like sure I'll do it. I gotta go anyway. I drop her off. She comes out about 45 minutes later all showered. I figured they were doing it in the shower. Nope. She said buddy wanted her to take a hot dump right on his chest while he cranked it, and, get this, he paid her $1,000 to do that. The wet hair was because she used the shower after they had finished. This was a regular customer of the friend. She gave me quite an impressive tip and thanked me for waiting longer than usual. She would charge tricks for 30 minutes or 1 hour, but most were 30 minutes calls and she would be done in 20. I've never heard of someone getting off by getting shat on, let alone paying that much to have it being done. I've only sex worked once when I didn't have enough money for a night out. Guy paid me £250 for me to sit on his back naked for 3 hours. He didn't do anything, just laid there, no conversation whilst I watched TV. I felt like I'd ripped him off, but he was very appreciative. There's plenty of fetishes I don't indulge, but understand how people get off. But I struggle to understand what he was getting out of it. To each their own. I'm not a sex worker, but was the GM of a strip club in Atlanta for 12 years. We had this guy come in every Wednesday with a McDonald's bag and go straight to VIP with the same girl every time. This wasn't ever odd to me as we allowed you to bring your own food and even order food while you were there. We had a free buffet during the day and ran the kitchen at night, so it wasn't odd for customers wanting to order out or bring in their own food. The owner did not mind it during the day as it left more free buffet food for the dancers and other customers. One Wednesday I was in the back talking with the dancers, and the dancer that went into VIP with the same guy was there when the waitress comes in and says he had arrived and she needed to head to VIP room to ASAP. She laughed and told her to hold on, she had to get her big heels out of her locker. The other girls started to laugh and one said she was jealous of the easy money the other girl was about to acquire. Curiosity got the best of me and I asked her what made the money so easy. She then proceeds to tell me that this guy stops at McDonald's before he comes and gets a quarter pounder with cheese, then puts it in a Ziploc bag and goes to VIP. Her only job while in VIP was to step on the bagged quarter pounder with one heel so it mushed it, and with her other foot to step on the dude's nuts and slap him a bit. She said it was the easiest and funnest $200 she made and looked forward to every Wednesday. Put on her big heels and went to go step on this dude's hamburger and nuts. I've been told a lot of stories by the dancers and walked in on quite a few interesting scenes in VIP, but this one always stood out to me.